If you're in the professional services industry, you know how vital effective project management is for your success. Now, most professional services businesses use the traditional waterfall project management methodology. But the question is waterfall okay, or should you be using something different like agile? Don't worry if you don't know what these terms are. I'll explain them in a minute. And today I'm going to break down the pros and cons of each methodology to help you decide what's best for your firm. So now let's go over the basics. Agile is an iterative project management approach. It breaks projects down into small incremental pieces. Now, waterfall, which is why it's more popular, is a more linear sequential approach. If you've seen the typical project plan, it kind of goes from the top left and works its way to the bottom right. And basically it's more sequential, and each phase depends on the deliverables of the preceding phase. Now, both have their merits and drawbacks depending on your needs. So let's dive in. Let's start with Agile. So here are some of the pros and cons of Agile. Agile is very flexible. Changes can be made very, very late in the project management process. And because that's the whole idea of it, it's iterative and you can make changes whenever you want. It's also quick to delivery. So you actually get much faster time to showing something to your client, because if it's incremental development. Stakeholder engagement is much higher because you're getting constant stakeholder review and approval of every single delivery. So it ensures that your client actually gets exactly what you're looking for. However, there are some cons to Agile project management. So for example, it can be difficult to manage due to the frequent changes. It can also be complex in terms of the fact that its sheer complexity means that it's actually more difficult to train your team to use it. It can have a higher cost because it takes more time and resource investment specifically to get it started up, but also it also takes up more time in terms of having the regular meetings to see where we are, to actually deal with Agile project management. And it may result in scope creep, especially if it's not carefully managed. Now let's look at waterfall. And let's look at the pros and cons of the waterfall model. So for example, one of the biggest pros is one of the reasons why it's so popular with professional services businesses, is it's easy to manage due to its linear approach. It's also a lot clearer and easier to document, especially if the scope is really clear and everything is agreed at the beginning. It's predictable, which is why a lot of clients like it, prefer it, because you can set timelines and you can set a budget, and therefore in theory, they are easier to meet. Practice, perhaps that's not the case, but in theory, they are easier to meet. However, it does have a lot of cons, as many of you may already be aware. So, for example, it's harder to make changes once you've started. And that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of professional services businesses struggle to make money on their projects, because clients are constantly requesting changes that weren't originally scoped. It's a longer delivery time. So your actual service is not delivered until the end of the project, or close to the end of the project. And that in itself creates risk. It is higher risk and higher uncertainty, especially if the project is it's a very long project, and then you end up having to do a bunch of rework. So the question then is, how do you choose between Agile and Waterfall? And here are some guidelines that we can give you, or I can give you, to help make that decision. The project complexity is a big factor. You should definitely choose Agile for complex, long-term projects that have a lot of uncertainties, and Waterfall for the simpler, shorter projects where everything is defined. If the client requirements are unclear, then you should definitely go for Agile, because that way it allows you to incrementally deliver what you think the client wants and course correct as necessary. Finally, resource availability can be a factor. If you have limited resources, Waterfall's predictability might be more suitable. But all in all, it really does depend on the nature of the project. So for example, if you have a software development or a creative project, then Agile is probably the better methodology for you. However, if you work in construction or manufacturing, or if you're an architect, then perhaps Waterfall is probably the better one for you. The key takeaway here, though, is that the better methodology really does depend on your project needs. There is really no right answer. But anyway, if you still have any questions or you want some personalized advice for your firm, feel free to reach out to us at info@highleysolutions.com. Also, look out for my new book, Project Management for Professional Services, which has a whole chapter on Agile project management. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel and click the like button. And thanks for tuning in.